Hello, my friends. You see what is happening? There is Zelensky, a president of Ukraine, who went to Sweden today, and there is the Swedish Prime Minister on his left. And behind there is a well-recognized Gripen Fighter Jet. Awesome, fantastic airplane, especially the newest modification, which is called JAS 39 Gripen version E. So this E modification is the newest one. The fighter jet is made by Saab company, and Ukraine is willing to get around 150 of those units. From 100 till 150, it's the initial information we have obtained from this meeting. So blue and yellow help blue and yellow, and you might say it's the fantastic news. I agree with you, it's awesome, but there is always a big but. So at first it's the initial document that was signed, so it's just the very beginning of this entire very long process for Ukraine to obtain those fighter jets. They cannot respawn them just like that from their factories and present to Ukraine. It is physically not possible. Yeah, by the way, we have those pictures tweeted by the Sweden embassy in Ukraine, kind of the funny meme pictures. Everything is awesome around those news, except that Ukraine will have to wait years and years even for the first delay of the first airplane. While Zelensky was more optimistic about Gripens, he stated that maybe Ukraine might obtain those the next year, but again it is not possible, and the Swedish Prime Minister confirmed that. He stated that Ukraine might obtain the first aircraft from this contract not earlier than in 3 years. 3 freaking years. And you know, I tend to trust the Swedish Prime Minister because he knows his own country production capabilities. So it's absolutely not the immediate support of Ukrainian military, Ukrainian aviation. Yes, Ukraine needs fighter jets as well as lots of the other systems. And who knows what it could be in 3 years then Ukraine start to obtain those airplanes. Yeah, for now the situation on the front lines is mostly standstill with just minor fluctuations. Yeah, Russia has initiative mostly, but they do not move that fast as they used to. So there could be still the military confrontation in Ukraine, Russia-Ukrainian war, and I expect it to continue. That's why, yeah, after all, this contract is good for Ukraine. But again, just for you to understand, it is not decisive for Ukraine right now and even in a middle range perspective. Gripen is very effective. So it's in Swedish Air Force, Brazilian Air Force, South Africa and Hungary. You see that number built is 300 of the airplanes. Quite a lot, but they want to produce way more, and the Ukrainian contract will be the biggest one, potentially. The good thing about this aircraft that it is more modern compared to F-16. Well, Ukraine actually has some of the advanced modifications of F-16, some of them, not all. But Gripen's Eco modification is after all better, more modern. It's a very versatile, multi-purpose jet, but the price of it is quite high. Well, it's still lower than F-16. For the used one, I think it's 40 up to 50 million, but for the new one, roughly 150 million. So the total price of this contract just for the airplanes is roughly $22.5 billion. And here we just speak about the iron, not the training of the personnel, maintenance, pilots, weapons, and so on. So in perspective, it could be 30 billion or even more if we count everything. And as you understand, for now, this price list is unrealistic. And Sweden just cannot give those airplanes, produce and give them to Ukraine, unfortunately. We live in this modern-day capitalismus, I think, after all, luckily. And for every sort of the job, for every sort of the production, there should be a payment. And can Ukraine pay $30 billion? Of course not. Maybe Ukraine, in the best case scenario, could purchase a couple of the aircraft of the type, not more. So of course this deal was agreed with our investors in Europe, who also take care about their defense. They understand that Ukraine is the only actual military force which is capable to hold Russian aggression. That's why in perspective, especially when we speak about many years of this contract, I don't think that there will be some of the obstacles for Ukraine to obtain funds for Gripens. And Sweden also partially will invest in that as the part of NATO and European Union. But again, I wouldn't be too much optimistic. This deal should have been done in 2022 for it to work right now. For the pilot training, it will not take that much time then to produce that number of the airplanes for Ukraine. And Ukraine absolutely needs the big number of the planes. You see, Ukraine already has F-16s, but the number is not enough to operate on the front lines, so they're just used as the anti-drone, anti-missile warfare behind the front lines, shooting many of the Russian Shahed drones and Ha-22 missiles. By the way, the last night there was also the massive Russian strike on Ukraine. I'm gonna speak about it in the next video. This video I want to dedicate for aviation topic, especially Gripen, those breaking news we have, and I want to speak about it because it's my field. I used to be pilot, so I know something about it, even though I'm not a military guy, but I like to speak about aviation. So nowadays, for example, against the Russian Sukhoi 35, you cannot put F-16. That's why Ukraine needs absolutely bigger number of those ancient airplanes, compared to the modern day produced planes. Even though those F-16s were modernized, but the top has already been reached, you cannot jump over it. The Russian fighter jets are way better, whether we like it or not, but the modern day jets, Sukhoi 35 and even Sukhoi 30 MS, they're much better. So to conquer them, Ukraine absolutely needs swarm of those F-16s to operate from multiple of the directions, to have this competition on the front lines, and there we may speak about some certain possible advantage. But against the Russian army that has lots of those airplanes, Ukraine also needs hundreds of F-16s, for example. So the only immediate solution for Ukraine to try to reach this air superiority on the front lines is to obtain a bunch of F-16s. Who has those? The United States of America. And does Donald Trump want to give those to Ukraine? Absolutely not. There is no talks about it. United States actually sent some of the F-16s to Ukraine, but they're not flyable. The Pentagon sent some of the airplanes just for the spare part usage. Nothing more, nothing less. Ukraine even used those as monuments in some of the museums. That's it. Because from some of the airplanes it was not possible to take any sort of the gear. Well, Europe has just a limited number of F-16s, and they send those to Ukraine only after they receive F-35s. And for example, Belgium has obtained F-35s, but they will only transfer their F-16s to Ukraine as promised and agreed before, once its new F-35s are fully operational. So they obtain those jets, but they look at them and they fly them, they try to think how to make them more effectively, and since they do that stuff, Ukraine is not obtaining crucially needed F-16s. So the first 3 F-35s have already arrived, but it will take about a year to a year and a half to bring them into full service, and only after that, it's very, very slow. I don't know, the reaction is just pathetic, and it seems like those bureaucrats, they think they can put the situation on hold. No, in Ukraine, everything might change. Now, it's slowed down on the front lines, but maybe Russia may come out with some new ideas of how to break through Ukrainian defense. And maybe in this case, Ukraine wouldn't need those F-16s any longer. Yeah, it's like impossible scenario, you may say, but I'm just stating that Ukraine needs support right now. But this year, Ukraine obtained less support than the previous one, and it's crazy. Just imagine, transferring the existing airplanes will take 1 year or 1 year and a half. And with Gripen contract, we're not speaking about the actual airplanes. They do not exist, they will be produced. So how much time it might take for Ukraine to obtain all of 100 or 150, no one may predict. Yeah, unfortunately, guys, the situation is like that, and Ukraine has to rely even on the Soviet park of the airplanes MiG-29, Sukhoi 27. They're very effective, actually, and Ukraine is using those on the front lines to launch some of the gliding bombs. This freaking A-10 that I have it because it's one of my favorite airplanes, if not the most favorite from all of the military aviation. United States already announced that they're gonna scrap it the next year, so why not to send those to Ukraine? Because Ukraine continue to use Sukhoi 25, it's also the attack airplane. This one is attack airplane. It may drop gliding bombs, it may fly very low. Some people say, oh, you cannot use A-10 without air superiority. No, you can use it, and Ukraine already proved it. Russians are also not using their aviation deep inside the Ukrainian territory, so actually on the front lines, this could be a very, very effective tool if Ukraine obtains those massively. But no, let's send them to the desert in Arizona together with F-16s. and let them rust there under the heat. That's the strange reality we live in. Yes, guys, sorry to disappoint you. I really like the contract that was signed today in Sweden, the initial part of it. We'll see how it goes. But in general, the situation with military support for Ukraine, it's not good. Not good at all. Ukraine should obtain those fighter jets like F-35, the best of the best, to conquer Russian army. It seems like democracies still do not understand what is happening out there in Ukraine. It's not a regional war. It is a war between autocracies and democracies. Well, with Donald Trump, it is understandable. He will never supply those fighter jets to Ukraine, not even F-16s. But there are lots of the other options for different airplane types. Yeah, this is the very, very beautiful airplane. And one more factor, that with Gripen, Ukraine will obtain one more separate aircraft type that requires different infrastructure for maintenance, for training, for everything. In Ukraine, it's already Soviet aircraft, F-16, Mirage 2000, will be Gripen, yeah? As it happens with the ground forces in Ukraine, there is no any sort of the unification. We fight with what we obtain. Well, I think in the current variant, it's also okay. But of course, it leads to more money which are spent to organize all of that unique infrastructure for every branch of the vehicle, air vehicle, ground vehicle in Ukrainian army. I hope you understand that, yeah? Yes, the war itself is very, very expensive thing, but in case of Ukraine, it could be even more expensive. Well, I hope that this deal will work as fast as possible, and they'll start to produce those fantastic airplanes just right now, day one. Come on. Sweden, we believe in you. Thank you so much for your kind support of Ukraine. This could be really a breakthrough if we speak about the Ukrainian aviation. Fantastic, magical airplane, capable really to achieve the air superiority even against the Russian fleet if you have many of those. And my friends, stand by for my next video. I'm gonna update you in a few hours. We have some awesome news coming from the front lines. Ukraine is on counterattack, was capable to liberate one more very important settlement. And if you want to support this channel, my job, which is pretty much not possible without your support, please follow me on Patreon. The link for it is in the video description below, or on membership of this YouTube channel. Click follow to support the job if you are able to, if you wish to. And I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.